Pastor Ron Jetter, Thursday, the 30th of July, 2020, Immanuel Lutheran Church, Grandview, Washington, and I hope you're inside where it's at least cool and you can keep yourself hydrated. It's supposed to be in the mid to high hundreds, possibly 108 or so, as our heat wave this week of temperatures over 100 pretty much every day is going to continue probably another day, and then it will break a little bit on the weekend. I've been looking through the book of Genesis, and we got finally to the Abraham saga. If you recall, I talked about the first 11 chapters being the primordial prologue. Now it begins the time of God's covenant people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who will then be referred to over and over and over again. I was in the church yesterday. If you saw my message, you know that I record live from the church. I took my grandson downstairs to show him the room, and he doesn't really know the story of Noah's Ark. And that one room, the Sunday school room, has Noah's Ark. It's got painted on the wall, and it's got books about it, and there's a plastic Noah's Ark with little animals that you can fold open. It's amazing how brief the story of Noah is, just a couple of chapters, and yet how overwhelmingly popular that story has. That's a classic story. That has staying power. It's got all the elements you want, and it's got things that kids love. A boat and little animals. And a guy with a beard and a big cane. Who wouldn't love all of that? Now we get into Abraham, or Abram as he's called now. Not quite as popular as Noah. Abram doesn't have an ark. What he will have is descendants. He is far more important to the overall story of the Hebrew people than is Noah. Noah is a great story. Abraham is the patriarch of the people who today, their descendants, the Jews, continue to point to as the father of their race, of their religion. We as Americans look to George Washington as the father of our country, the first president, the general of the Continental Army. The Jewish understanding and absolute affirmation of Abraham goes way, way beyond that, because they believe they are all related to him by blood and by faith. And both of those are important to them. We got up to verse 4, and we found out that Abram was 75 years old when God said, oh, hey, it's time to get moving. Time to make an agreement with you. And his wife Sarai was with him, and his nephew Lot. So we find out Abram had a brother, and they left him. And I love verse 6, verse 6. It says, at that time the Canaanites were in the land, and it was known as the land of Canaan. Abram was told, go to the land of Canaan. And there were Canaanites in the land of Canaan. Well, where else would the Canaanites be? Right where they were allowed to go. That was why it became the land of Canaan. They're the descendants of Canaan, who was cursed. Noah's grandson was cursed. And Abram is entering the land that his descendants will one day take from the Canaanites, that was preordained during Noah. Couple of things here. The Lord appeared to Abram. And how did the Lord appear to him? It doesn't ever say to that. It just said the Lord appeared to him. Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So Abram built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved on to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and invoked the name of the Lord. So every time he has an encounter with the Lord, he builds an altar. Well, you know what? I think I would too. You ever met someone who says they spoke with God or heard God speak to them? In the entire Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, Jewish Testament, Christian, there are only a handful of people who ever appear in a story as having spoken directly with or heard God directly. A handful. and their lives were absolutely changed. I'm not saying that people who claim to have heard God, seen God, had God speak to them aren't in their right mind. I'm just saying that if their life isn't totally and completely changed, then I don't know. I have my suspicions. I'll leave it at that. The word Bethel, Beth, house, El, one of the names for God, El, and whenever you hear the El, Elohim, it's one of the names of God. Again, they didn't use the word Yahweh, so they would say Elohim Adonai or Elohenu, and that meant, oh, the Lord. That's how we would translate it, the Lord. And when it's in our Bibles, when Yahweh appears and it's translated, it's Lord, and it's capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, all capitalized, the Lord. And that's pretty much every translation does that. There are some new modern ones that will actually put the name Yahweh, and some American translations that will use the word Jehovah, which I mentioned a couple of days ago. But here's Abram, his wife, and his nephew going to the land of Canaan, and we get to verse 10, there's a famine in the land. So already they've gone through the land, into it and out of it. Abram went down to Egypt to reside there as an alien, for the famine was severe in the land. We did a Bible study on Ruth earlier this year and learned that Naomi took her 2 sons to Moab because there was a famine in the land, and that's where they married these two women, Ruth being one of them, and Orpah being her sister-in-law. But that's much, much later in the story. I'm getting ahead of myself. There's a famine. They go down there. Verse 11. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know well that you are a woman beautiful in appearance. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they'll kill me, but they'll let you live. So say that you are my sister, and it'll go well with us. Okay, so Abram already assumes that Sarai is going to be desired by some powerful Egyptian. They need the hospitality of the Egyptians because they may have skills, but Abram, he has some wealth, but he doesn't have food. Abram's 75. How old is Sarai? 29? Well, yeah, we have words for people like that, but I guess back then it was pretty common, unless she was the best 72-year-old around. I don't know. There's so much we just don't know. And what we do know is that Abram was very worried about this. Worried that his wife would be desired and that, let me think. My wife is desirable and somebody powerful is going to kill me so they can have my wife. What does that sound like? It sounds like one of Abram's descendants. Way, way down the line. We have to go 14 generations to get to David, who looked upon Bathsheba and said, wow, I want her, but I need to have her husband killed. That's not a problem. He's one of my generals. Just put him where the fighting is thickest. Yeah, so this is a real thing. This happened. Men were killed so that their wives could become property of somebody else who was powerful. So Abram wasn't necessarily doing anything that was wrong. He was using his mind. Verse 14, when Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. When officials of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to the Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. For her sake, he dealt well with Abram. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, female slaves, female donkeys, and camels. So essentially, Pharaoh's saying, okay, hey, I've taken your sister. I'm going to pay you for your sister. You're going to be my brother-in-law of sorts. She's going to be one of my many women. But here, have some livestock. She's worth that. Verse 17, but the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called Abram and says, what have you done to me? Why did you tell me she was your sister, not your wife? I took her for my wife. Now then, here's your wife. Take her and go. We're going to leave it there, and on Friday we'll pick up the story again. Why didn't Abram trust God and say, God, protect us in this land. You have taken us into and out of the land of Canaan. Well, Abram doesn't yet have that kind of trust relationship with the Lord God Almighty. He believed God enough to leave his family, leave his home, and take his wife and his nephew and his small, maybe some servants and some small flocks, and follow this God he didn't yet know. But he doesn't yet fully trust God. He's still using his own ingenuity. So God and Abraham got to work on this tomorrow.